In the first part, I discussed homeowner objectives and provided a list of the related strategies or exit strategies to be considered by homeowners facing foreclosure. In other words, how do you end the foreclosure proceeding? What mechanism is there? And these I call exit strategies, and I want everyone to have several exit strategies in mind. You may not get the one you want, but you should at least rank them in order of preference. Now I want to discuss each of these exit strategies to help you figure out an appropriate series of strategies for yourself. I want you to know the different exit strategies and rank them in order of their preference for you. You may not be able to obtain your first preference and may have to settle therefore for something less than what you want as your exit from the foreclosure proceeding. Now, I continue to break these down into two categories. One is if you have no present equity in your home and you have decided that you don't want to keep the home because of other factors such as children going to school, neighbors, credit rating, etc. So if you have no equity and you're willing to let the home go, you could do nothing. That's the first strategy, which is not a strategy, it's just giving up totally and do nothing, lose your home in a default judgment and get a deficiency judgment possibly against you for an amount that includes default interest, which is something like between 15 and 24%, in addition to the other money that you promise to pay each month, the various court costs and other charges, as well as $5,000 or $10,000 maybe in attorney's fees. This obviously is not the way that anyone should go. There are various other alternatives, but as I've said, 97% of homeowners in foreclosure seem to be taking the default route where they give up, and I think that's wrong for various reasons. But let's talk about now another strategy, that you might just walk away from the property, abandon it, or turn over the keys to the bank. You might be able to avoid a deficiency judgment if you do this, at least when you turn over the keys to the bank. Also, as to deficiency judgments, you should review your documents to see whether the bank would be entitled to a deficiency judgment in the event of foreclosure. Some mortgages and notes say yes, others do not. So you should really understand whether you have that potential liability before reviewing, or at least in connection with your review of all your exit strategies, at least understand whether you have that liability there or not, because it could and may well impact on your decision as to other exit strategies, such as defending the action and losing. If you don't have a deficiency judgment, then it is not as onerous if you lose. Now, a third objective or exit strategy is to have you or a real estate broker arrange for a short sale, and that means you need to find a buyer for the property. You need to deal with your bank to get the bank's approval. The bank would get all the proceeds of the sale of the property usually, and you need to get the bank to agree that you will not have to pay any deficiency. That is the essence of a short sale, is that the bank agrees not to hold you liable for any deficiency if there is a potential for a deficiency. When you have junior, that is second or third mortgages, you will probably have added difficulty in trying to arrange for a short sale, because the second and third mortgagees stand to lose everything because they get nothing. Unless that can be modified or sweetened in some fashion, you may not be able to arrange for a short sale. It's more difficult when you have junior lienors. 4. Writing out foreclosure to recapture the hidden equity. Now, I have a video on this, and what I'm saying there is that defend the action, and if you defend properly and you raise legitimate issues, you probably can stay in the property for 2 years, sometimes 3 years, at least a year and a half after the foreclosure action is begun in New York State, and you don't pay any mortgage during that period, because if you made the payment and they accepted it, then the bank would waive its foreclosure action and they would be back to zero. So you get to remain in the property without having to pay the mortgage, And in doing so, if you would normally pay $4,000 a month on the mortgage and you wrote it out for 2 years, that's $96,000 minus your legal expense of maybe $500 a month. That's $12,000. So 96 minus 12,000 is 84,000. Maybe a couple of $2,500 in advance. So you're dealing with an $80,000 saving, which you might want to apply to the reduction of your credit cards. And also you should think seriously about buying someone else's problem at auction, where you can pick up another home very cheaply, and you have to make sure that the money is in the hands of people who would not be liable under a deficiency judgment. That's something to think about. So that's recapturing the hidden equity. So even if your property is underwater, you can capture $96,000 in value by writing out the property. If you're not in the property yourself, you could rent the property and make use of it. If you're in the property, you might even want to put tenants in there if you can get away with it, and increase your income from the property and keep that money. A modification agreement is the most desirable exit strategy for most people, and especially if the mortgage can be reduced to the present value of the property, but the bank is reluctant to do this in spite of everything that you've heard. An alternative to reducing the value, because of the existence of so many assignments and pooled interests in your mortgage, they may not be able to reduce the principal amount at all, and might have to resort to giving you a 2% interest rate or something like that in order to bring your monthly payment down to a level that's comparable to what you would pay on a mortgage where the principal amount is reduced to the present value. Of course, that leaves you stuck with a longer period of payout of the higher principal amount, but these are different ways that modification agreements might be written. But I caution you that the banks are not really happy to give modification agreements. I don't see them taking place as much as they should. I'm hoping that litigation vigorously pursued will result in appropriate modification agreements, which is the main exit strategy which people should have if they would like to keep their property, assuming that it can be kept at a proper price. And you want to avoid a deficiency judgment at the far end, or at least if you are going to be liable for a deficiency judgment, make sure in your planning that you don't have any money that can be captured, and therefore at the far end you might really want to take the ultimate goal, the ultimate exit, and that is file for bankruptcy as a way of eliminating deficiency and even credit card debt. And you wind up, or somebody that is you trust winds up with money that you allowed them to get legitimately, and as a result of the writing out of the equity, so that you wind up really much better off in the far end than you think you are right now. So exit strategies can preserve your equity in the property, and the forbearance agreement is one. The modification agreement is another. Writing out the foreclosure, hoping to get a modification agreement, but at least getting a return of your hidden equity. And then you might even be able to do a refinancing during this period if you look long enough and hard enough, and if the market bounces back for real estate, you might be able to get refinancing. And also, if you put some tenants in your property, you might be able to get enough income per month to justify the bank giving you a modification agreement, where now without tenants they may not be willing to do it. Of course, you have to make sure that you have a lawful tenancy, because it may not be, and you have to worry about that. Selling your property other than at a distress sale is a way of getting your equity out of the property, but you need to have a foreclosure delay in order to allow you a long time to try to work on selling your property. So you need to have a defense of a foreclosure action in order to assist you in selling the property and getting out your present equity, and also any future equity that might result in the delay when the market for real estate comes back. And of course, you want to avoid a deficiency judgment at the end of the foreclosure action. So if you have any questions, you can reach me, and here's my name and contact information.